like to introduce Stephen Murray, who is a local Culver City advocate for democracy and who lives down the street, not sure what street, and is also the director of the Baldwin Hills Oil Watch. Welcome, Mr. Murray.
Thank you very much. Now, my role in the next 15 minutes is to summarize everything that's been said so far this morning, fill in missing pieces, connect the dots that equate fracking with the democratic crisis, explain the proposed Culver City initiative, why and what it does, answer questions, and drive you to action. So I think I'll try to do that in 10 minutes. Now, first of all, what we have here at my slide is public health and safety a right or a property. I want to point out to you an abandoned well very close to where we are right now. You can all read that map. West LA College is right there. Right behind the Child Development Center is an abandoned well. And I walked over there. I saw no sign of well structure or indicate. No, it's just landscaping right there. Now, Dr. Baldwin was talking about vapors, other issues, and so forth. We've also had a problem in Culver City with our dog park, which Paul has mentioned, in which water flooding has caused the overflow of the aquifer and leaking of the well, and that was an abandoned well as well. So I just want to show you that it actually is an issue for you people here at the college. I mean, it's not just something in a hill. And actually, if I scan that out farther, you see abandoned wells in residential properties within Culver City. So it's a real issue. Fracking will exert pressure greater than water flooding does, and we have a chance of greater blowouts. Now, I guess the question was earlier about why does this seem so biased? Well, let me just say corporations have their outlets. And this is really the only outlet people have. They have money to buy their opinion. And I'm going to go into that right now. Next slide, please. First of all, we come up with what's called the regulatory myth. Now, environmental regulations were and agencies legalize and permit activities that harm the environment. Now, this shouldn't seem too difficult to understand why this happens. What I have here is a quote here from an Attorney General of the United States. He was a former railroad lawyer, and it's a very, very tasty one. He does very tasty quotes, so I like him. Regulatory agencies become a sort of barrier between corporations and the people, and a sort of protection against hasty and crude legislation hostile to corporations. So this was in common to the Interstate Commerce Commission, I believe. And regulations do have a place, particularly to protect people's rights. Immigration, for instance, there are areas where regulations are great, but in environmental areas, it's not so good, and I'll explain why further on. Next slide. So, our legal constraints. Our regulatory structure is designed to protect corporations. Communities are forbidden to protect health and safety when in conflict with regulations. Now, our Constitution and Supreme Court decisions have deliberately placed the rights of property and commerce over the rights of people, communities, and nature. Now, basically what this means is that communities cannot prohibit what the state and federal law allow. And this is a problem when we talk about banning fracking, or taking any action that we feel that removes us from harm. Next slide, please. This here is called the box of allowable activism. Not activism, I used to work at a computer game company. The box of allowable activism. Now, what we have here is state and federal preemption. This is basically where the state and federal government says that we have the authority to do this, you cannot. We have a Dillon's rule, which isn't as important here in California, but it still is visible, in which the state says cities are children of the state. They cannot make their own laws. We have the corporate Commerce Clause rights. Basically, the Commerce Clause is a fascinating piece of the Constitution. It has a lot of things, and actually, environmental laws are based out of the Commerce Clause to give you a sense of how environmental laws are based off of business constraints. Now we have the corporate personhood rights as well. And there's our local community right in there. And basically, what we have to stay within that framework. That's where the regulations are, that's where the laws are. If we step out of that framework, we get into problems. Next slide, please. So if we jump out, we open up the city for monetary damages. A corporation can sue for lost profits, for other things, but also could sue for violating the corporation's civil rights under law, which was actually intended to protect the civil rights of newly freed slaves. Now, a corporate minority basically can legally override local laws and community majority. This is the structure of government we have here. Next slide, please. So this brings us to a crisis, or a little problem or conflict. Now, I'm going to look at I already talked about the first one, A. A corporation's right to make profit supersedes the community's rights of health and safety. Now, the B is what I think we think about, how we think about our rights. Every human, I believe it's really, every human believes they have a basic right to health and safety. And they believe that our health is connection to the environment, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food, everything. And also further, I think people should make the connection that our community should have the power to make local laws that work for us. Now, next slide. The question then is, how do we change our health and safety from being a property to a right? So basically, our health and safety is a property of corporations. It's a property of regulations. Now, the politicians, they see regulations as a way of balancing domestic energy production with people's health and safety. And they're trading our health and safety as if it were a commodity or a piece of property. My health and safety is not something that can be bought and sold. Next slide, please. The solution, and this is the ordinance right here, or the charter amendment. And actually, there are a couple more copies up here on the stage if you didn't get one. This is the actual full text of the amendment itself. I'd like to point out to you the anatomy of the draft rights proposal. This is for an initiative that we want to put forth into the city of Culver City to address the issues of fracking. Now, there are reasons why I sort of pointed out the reasons why the city itself sees this as an issue, because they're opening themselves up to liability. But I believe what I have here is a solution to that problem. Now, basically, we directly challenge the four constraining legal doctrines. So we saw state and federal preemption, we saw Dillon's rule, we saw the corporate personhood and the corporate Commerce Clause rights. And some people call this organized civil disobedience, but it's an actual legal tactic that's going to work. It's working 150. This has worked in 150 other communities across the U.S. who have been threatened with toxic sludge, fracking, all sorts of environmental ills. Next slide, please. Now, our proposal also recognizes that the rights of ecosystems and nature, thus challenging one of the most fundamental underpinnings or precepts of our current legal system, that the natural environment is property. I mean, this is a profound statement, whereas I think that was Locke, I mean, it's basically the history of I think this is, you guys think you want to jump it there. Now, Pittsburgh passed this law. We have Pittsburgh was the first city to pass an anti-fracking bill using this means, this rights-based method. Now, next slide, please. So where does this come from? Can we actually say that we have a right? Can we assert that we have a right? I mean, look at the Arab uprising, Arab Spring, we look at Czechoslovakia, we look at Rosa Parks, we look at the civil rights, we look at the freedom of the slaves. I mean, how everything before those things happened, things were treated as property, and they had to assert their right in order to gain it. And that's what we want to do too. And we have actual legitimate power to do that. The first is our country's first legal document, the Declaration of Independence. And in it says, people are born with certain inalienable rights, and those governments are instituted among people to secure those rights. And the next one, I got straight off the U.S. Senate webpage, a little quote about the Constitution. Written in 1787, ratified in 1788, and
5 minutes.
Since 1789, the U.S. Constitution is the world's longest surviving written charter of governments. Its first three words, "We the people," affirm that the government of the United States exists to serve its citizens. So we have this presence or presentation that the government is here to serve the people. But I just talked to you about how corporations are usurping the people's authority. Let's go to the next slide. Within the California Constitution, we have also laws as well which enable us to do this. Rights guaranteed by the Constitution are not dependent upon those guaranteed by the United States Constitution. All political power is inherent in the people, and also city charters shall supersede all laws inconsistent therewith. And there's other parts of it as well. Next slide. But what if these corporations rise to the challenge and say, no, you cannot make a law that says there's no fracking? Well, if they do this, it's very interesting. Because what they're doing is they're opening up the Pandora's box. They're displaying for all to see where they get their authority and exercise it. When they have to specifically attack communities' rights in order to get their rights back. And that's different than just defending your rights against regulations. They have to openly they also have to move. This happened in Pennsylvania quite a bit. They moved the legislature to change laws to usurp these cities that make this happen. Next slide, please. And then what happens after that? Well, it fuels a movement. Now, we already know about corporate personhood. We all know about that. We've heard about it. We have, out there, we have the SNC people. We have Move the Bend. We're trying to remove people's personal rights. If we start local, we can move state, we can move to federal. There's all strategies to go. So this is basically a PR disaster for corporations if they attack us on this basis of saying that we do not have the power of self-government. And it's also a people movement to overturn these laws.